You're listening to The Main Loop, a bi-monthly podcast all about what makes games interesting, engaging, and most importantly, fun to play. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of The Main Loop. I am once again Sean Bragg, and here in real life, IRL, is Stu Urbach.
This is like the second or third time we've done it IRL.
Yeah, it's great.
Craziness.
This time we have two microphones, so, I mean...
Yeah, we look like professional hipster podcasters. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, I usually do the thing where I combine the words together, but that was too many words for me to combine together. Perfipstaster.
Perfipstaster.
There it is.
It sounds like a bad staph infection.
Yikes. Or some Perfipstat C. That's what it's an ointment.
Yeah.
Oh, well, starting off today's show, we do have a little bit of follow-up from the last couple weeks. Stu, you are on a roll with these blog posts.
I now have four in a row blog posts doing the thing where I type the words into the internet.
Directly
into the internet. It's been great. Been on a bit of a card game strategy kick. Kind of talking about challenges and stuff around like designing collectible card games and why they're so unique in competitive sports, esports. The sports. Yeah, so it's been pretty cool. You can find that all at my blog at amateurmythology.wordpress.com.
Sweet. Well, that'll tie in nicely later when we talk about a certain card game that we've been dipping our toes into. As far as follow-up, I don't think I've got anything this go-around, so we may as well just do the Switchcast.
Yeah, the Switchcast.
So let me start off the Switchcast by saying that the Zelda DLC was definitely enough to pull me back into Breath of the Wild. Even though this isn't like the new story mode, like this was definitely got me invested again. So I have been spending a lot of time looking for the new armor pieces and the new items. And just that alone is really fun. Like finding the clues that tell you where to go and then doing the searching has been great. So
I haven't yet, so I'm like just in the wilderness, if you will, on this.
Well, so this first DLC pack added, like I said, new armor pieces to find, there's a couple new armor sets and new items, and you basically have to go find some journals that tell you where they actually are. And then you have to go to the place and try to find these treasure chests. And they're surprisingly tough to find. Like a lot of them, if you're in like an outdoor area, they're like the ones that are buried mostly in the ground. So you'll only see like a little sliver of the treasure chest, and then you have to use the magnet power to pull it out.
Oh, wow.
So you end up running around with your magnet power on a lot to like try to see if there's any metal you can pick up. So that's actually been really fun. I did find Tingle's outfit. So you can dress head to toe like Tingle.
I saw screenshots of that. That looked horrifying.
It is. However, at nighttime, you run faster when you're wearing it. So that's nice. Which is also kind of creepy. Like, why does the Tingle suit give you like faster speed at night? Is it because that dude's hiding in bushes?
Probably.
That's what...
Given how... I saw just like a series of screenshots about how everyone else in the world reacts to you when you're wearing the suit.
Oh.
Yeah, and...
Not good.
No, it's not. Doesn't look particularly positive.
So I got that. I got the Korok mask, which is great because it lets you cheat for finding Korok's seeds.
Oh, that's nice.
Whenever you're near a Korok that's hiding somewhere, the mask like shakes and sparks fly off of it, and you hear little Korok voices. So that's great. And I also got Majora's Mask, which is creepy as all get out.
Oh, really? I didn't know that was in the game.
Yeah, and that's awesome. So yeah, wearing Majora's Mask, I think it says it makes you stealthier to certain monsters. So it's pretty spooky. And
that's cool. I have a fun Korok story.
Oh.
I was in the icy...
You were playing Korok Dinosaur Hunter?
Basically, I was in like the icy mountain part, just kind of like tooling around for funsies, like you do. Escaped a Lionel, like found some stuff. Start climbing the mountain. I'm like, here's a mountain. There's probably something good here at the top.
I'm sure the developers put time and effort into like a pathway around this mountain with things to discover, but I'm just gonna jump and climb until I get up there.
Like finding some stuff, encounter some enemies. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. I felt like the music was like starting to amp up. I'm like, oh, maybe this is like a dragon or something else or whatever. Get to the top, see a rock. I was like, I'm gonna hope this isn't what I think it. No, it is, but whatever. Let's try this. Pick up the rock, and there's a Korok underneath it. I was like, I just spent 7.5 minutes climbing this mountain, and all I got was this Korok seed.
Was this stupid little guy that I hate. I hate you, Korok. No, I love it though. That's what the Koroks are like.
It's wonderful.
That's still one of my favorite parts of that game though, is like you're walking around and then you're like, hey, look at that ring of rocks over there. There's one rock missing. And then you're like, well, I'm going to put a rock there and see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Of course, once I figured out what the Korok seeds were actually for, that was a game changer because I didn't know why I was actually collecting them all. It was like, maybe something will happen. I was like, I guess I'll just get a bunch of them and see if something happens. And turns out, no, you like go to a guy and you buy inventory slots with it. And so I now have no Korok seeds because I finally went and did that. So I can hold all the swords and bows. It's great.
I can like hold half of the swords and bows. It's wonderful.
I did learn, and this was another thing I feel dumb for not knowing now, how to do the shield jump. Because you can jump on your shield and surf on it.
I actually found there's a part of the game where you can just surf for a while, snowboard for a while down a mountain.
Oh, nice.
For like 20 rupees.
Okay.
You just like find this woman in a cabin on a mountain, and then you just like snowboard with her for a while. It's kind of neat. It's like, this is weird and awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I was watching the Summer Games Done Quick, they were doing a speed run of Breath of the Wild, which we'll definitely talk about. But they were doing the shield surfing a lot, and I was like, what are they even doing? I have no idea how to do this. So I figured out how to do that, which is great and fun. But also, you can kind of abuse it because when you go, like when you jump forward and you go to do where you jump on your shield, you jump a little bit higher and farther than you normally would.
Oh.
And so if you're willing to take a little bit of damage on your shield, you can actually use that to make jumps that normally you would have to like go find a piece of metal to like make a bridge or something like that. You can actually like use that to get over some jumps. So that's kind of a little fun.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, a little fun trick. He does the little flip in the air to get his shield out. So
oh yeah.
I'm breaking lots of shields now, surfing on them. So it's not
breaking all the shields.
Yeah, it does void the warranty, surfing on your shield, I found. I went back to the shield vendor and they were like, you surfed on this, didn't you?
Sean Brigg, shield breaker.
Shield surfer. The shieldver surfer. So yeah.
Sure.
Breath of the Wild is still really good. And Newsflash, everyone. I don't know if you've heard this indie title. Breath of the Wild.
It's kind of a known.
But speaking of Breath of the Wild and speaking of Summer Games Done Quick, that happened since the last episode, and that included a 43-minute Breath of the Wild speedrun. And this was not using weird glitches or anything. This was just do the plateau and then immediately go to Ganon's castle and kill Ganon, which was ridiculous.
Which, given the amount of trouble I have killing most enemies, seems impossible to me. So that's nice.
They did use...
It's good for them.
So there were several... The person running it did several of the thing where you use the stasis power on a rock, and then you hit the rock as many times as you can, and then you just jump on the rock, so that then when the rock goes flying through the air, Link is just holding on to it. And that's how they skipped like most of Hyrule Field.
Okay, that makes sense. Also not something I've ever actually been able to do. Every time I try that, I'm either like jumping on the rock while it's already flying, or it's going like the wrong direction. Yeah. It's like, this is great.
I have such a hard time getting things to go the direction that I want with the stasis power.
Have you hit the shrine that has the golf, where you're golfing with the stasis power?
Yes.
It took me hours.
Oh, yeah. I had to finally Google because there's like an exact number of hits that it takes. And I even found that like the weapon I was using, it was like, oh no, don't use that one. Those hits count as like 1.23 hits, and so you'll get too many.
And the best part is like because there's a chest that they give you the weapon.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like refill when it breaks. So you're just like on your if you could destroy all of your weapons reasonably and just be out of luck.
Which I did. Yes.
That's great. You're like, what is happening? This is
But it
awesome.
was, yeah, it ended up being like, okay, hit it 5 times with the hammer that they give you, and then switch to something else, something less powerful, and then hit it 2 times with that, but really gently, not full strokes. It was that I hated that one. That
great.
one and the motion control shrines.
Oh,
are
yeah.
awful. They're really bad because I'm rotating my controller to the right clockwise, and the thing I'm controlling is rotating counterclockwise. And I'm going up and it's going down, and I have no idea.
It's like if you want to do like small actions, that's great. When it requires to like have a specific center of gravity and then remember that over time, it just like the center of gravity clearly shifts. You're like, I'm moving this much, that's moving that much, and now my center of gravity is like halfway in between. Kind of.
None of this makes any sense. Yeah,
This is great.
I have no idea where I am in the world, so that's still the worst part. Maybe the second worst part of Breath of the Wild. The first worst is still sometimes Link just grabs stuff. I'm like, let's just walk by this tree. And he's like, I'm 10 yards from it. I'm jumping on and climbing it. And then I'm like, I really need to climb this tree or I'm going to die. And he's like, nope, I'm just going to walk into it with my face and then go around it. I'm like, I don't understand how to make you climb things in this game.
Yeah, the like Apple targeting system. Clearly not designed by the Air Force. Because it has no basis in logic. You'll be like, okay, I'm going to rotate so the apple is like the center of my screen. I'm going to hit A. Nope. I'm going to rotate like, and then eventually you just rotate and then just hit A until you get it. Because like there's no apparent logic to like when the apple is actually within Link's targeting system.
Yes.
There's like probably a good indie game in there that's just trying to grab apples as Link.
Grapples.
And just like
it's called Link's Grapples.
Being terrible.
Yeah, there's some rough patches in that game. I guess I'd still recommend it. You know, if you can look past those, I guess it's decent. So other Switch stuff going on this Friday is Splatoon Day.
I have
Splatoon D.
So many feelings. I am so excited. I am all of the excitement about this game.
Now I forget. Did you buy ARMS?
I did not buy ARMS. I bought Splatoon 1 for Wii U. Mm-hmm. I hated the stupid Wii U controller. It's awful. And I still love that game.
The first gen Kindle that they use as a controller.
It's not even a first gen Kindle. It's like if McDonald's wanted to give out a first gen Kindle as like a Happy Meal toy.
It's the Happy Meal tablet.
It's like about that weight and heft. So you just feel like you're holding something that is awful. And then targeting with it. It's like you can target your weapon with this thing.
The gyroscope targeting.
That's like the size of your face. Which again, center of gravity problems. Just like what's going on. And still, this was an amazing, amazing game.
Yeah.
It's like one of the few games where I was playing a 4v4 shooter and I wasn't frustrated when we were getting just absolutely destroyed. And you can absolutely get destroyed. But it's so hard naturally for the game to like, for you to be dominated. It's like really hard to play well, and it's really fun. And there's always something you can do even when you're not in combat. And it's very clear what that is, which is just like paint the ground somewhere. That's always something positive you can do. It's just like amazing. And the fact that now there's like a legitimate single player mode, even though you can't play it online, or you can't play the co-op online, which apparently Salmon Run is just like amazing.
Oh, so the co-op is like local only?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least for now, it was kind of unclear. I've heard both ways, but it seems like, at least for the time being, there are certain parts of like the single player co-op, I think the Salmon Run specifically, that are just local. But I am just so excited. It was an amazing game. I think it's going to be even better for the Switch. I think it could be like the first legitimate Nintendo esport. Sorry, not Smash Bros. Included, because Nintendo will always just assume that doesn't exist for whatever reason. Not getting into that.
Yeah.
But like it might be the first fully supported like Nintendo esport, and I think has the legs, has the tentacles to get there.
Ooh, the Splatoonticles is what they're technically called. Well, you mentioned that the esport thing, and I want to get back to Splatoon, but Evo was this past weekend, and maybe this week. I don't actually know because I'm not in the fighting game community. But I was watching some of it because this is like the big fighting game convention tournament, deal.
It's still like the biggest esport event on a yearly basis or something based on like prize payout or whatever. It's still like pretty high up there, even if it doesn't have like the same marketing as like MOBAs do.
Right, as like the international or something. But it's huge. And I always like tuning in to some of the feeds, mainly because there is a fun element of like, I have no idea what I'm watching and what's going on, but it looks difficult. But I always really like watching the Smash Brothers tournaments because
that stuff's insane.
It is
literally insane.
They just live on edges. They just live their whole lives hanging onto the edge of the platform and then trying to get like a surprise ambush in. I mean, it's a lot of fun to watch, but it is insane.
Also, still the strangest like damage system for a fighting game I've ever seen.
It's really
that no one tries to replicate ever.
No, yeah, it's great. I mean, it works so well. There's a really good episode of The Gaming Historian on YouTube all about the... My fridge is exploding. My fridge is going to explode.
This is perfect.
Yep. There's a great Gaming Historian episode all about the creation of Smash Brothers. And that's one of the things they talked about was the developers they had just made this 4-player fighting game with just generic bodies, just for fun, that they were thinking, eventually we'll come up with our own characters and things like that. And then it was kind of like time to demo a new product, and they were like, what if we just really quickly threw a couple of like Nintendo character models in this? And it was just like everybody that saw it was like, this is great. Like,
this is the best thing ever.
This is wonderful. And the combat system was pretty easy to figure out, and every character has the same moves for the most part, and it's great. So I would love a Smash Brothers Switch release to happen in the next year or so. Like
Smash Brothers Switch release, Super Mario Maker Switch release, Wind Waker Switch release.
Yeah.
There's just like such a huge list that they can plumb. Like literally the entire Wii U lineup. They can just re-release and make so much money on.
I would love to play that Hyrule Warriors game. That game was like the most mindless... Why am I playing this? And yet an hour later, you're just like, I'm still running around and hitting everything and throwing bombs. Going back to Splatoon, so coming out this Friday, I'm definitely interested to see if it gets an esport following. One thing you mentioned was that like you can lose and still have fun, and that has to be like the hardest thing to think about when you're designing a game, especially a multiplayer game, is like, can you be on the losing team or can you be the loser in the match and still have had a good time? Because a lot of games, if you don't win, you just feel like you wasted your time or you just like got crushed and steamrolled. And I'm curious to see like how Splatoon like makes that fun, even if you're not winning.
Yeah, I mean, like Blizzard is really the only other company that I have seen manage the two, and maybe like Rocket League. I guess Rocket League would be like this is actually one of the articles I wrote about was like the difference between what a sport is and what a competitive game is and what other games are, and that like the purpose of a sport is like to be competent at a core task. Like that's why people play sports. And like what's interesting is Blizzard is one of the few companies that like, and like creating a sport is more challenging than creating a game, or it has different requirements than creating a game. Blizzard is one of the few companies that's made good sports that are also good games. Nintendo has tended to make good competitive games. I think Smash Bros. Is like one of the few exceptions that's like really popular casually, also played really hardcore. It remains to be seen whether or not Splatoon can like get that following.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be a game that like I would throw down casually. Like it would be something I would see myself bringing my Switch along to play with other players like those commercials do.
Yeah.
Like, because that would be super fun, because it's just that fun. It'll be interesting to see if it has sort of the meat and the depth to like really thrive as an esport. And whether or not Nintendo really has any intention of backing it. That's always like the big question in the air.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that could help it is just the fact that it is Nintendo. And so even from, I mean, look at some of the biggest esports, okay? Look at Counter-Strike Go or League of Legends, Dota. And one of the biggest barriers is just the community aspect. People don't want to get in that environment where you're going to get cussed out and it's just going to be super negative. And now Nintendo, being like the family-friendly above all else company, with the way they're doing their network play and things like that, makes me think that Splatoon, although I can't really imagine people like flaming somebody out in Splatoon, but still, there's not that element, because when you play a Nintendo game, even something online, you sort of have this built-in expectation of like, this is going to be a relatively safe place. Like, I'm not going to have people like cussing me out and telling me they've done horrible things to my mother, and like, I'm not going to deal with all of that. Like, does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I think there's some of that, and just like in the types of games Nintendo designs, like it's really hard to get angry the same way about Splatoon that it is about other competitive games. Like, when you're playing with your teammates, there are times where you're just like, what are you doing? What is going on? Why are you doing this? And like, that'll still happen, but if you're somewhere like coloring something in the map, like, you're still doing something positive for the game, because you win or lose not based on like how many kills you have, but based on like the percent of the map that you color. And so like, even if you're off on your own, running away from your team, not being coordinated at all, derping around,
right,
it's still bad. It will probably cause you to lose, but it's really, I think it's less likely for people to want to flame you out, just because it's like, well, I'm still doing something positive.
Well, and that's something that even like, talking about Blizzard, like Heroes of the Storm has some things that are like that, where, okay, we're not doing well in like team fights right now, and the enemy team is like super grouped up and moving around, but I can actually go to like an empty lane and soak experience and help my team that way and contribute. And it's harder in that game because it's not as obvious. Like, people don't like as intuitively pick up like, oh, I should go
do this
like
thing,
hang out in this lane and get experience for my team so we can catch up, like in Splatoon, where it's like, I can shoot this wall right now. But having those kind of things where there is still, I can still be contributing, that's one thing that's tough about like Overwatch. And Overwatch is this super fun, incredibly well done competitive game. But if you are on a team and if your team is just losing, I mean, you just lose. That's all it is.
Yeah,
because there's no experience, there's no, there's an objective that your team is on. And so like, if you're on the assault team and you just can't get through like a choke point, you just lose for the whole round.
It's easily the hardest thing about competitive shooting games. It goes to like CS:GO, Team Fortress, Overwatch. When you're losing, and because there's not like these artificial skill caps that MOBAs impose, where it's like, well, you are this level and that level damage output is different, changes over time, so that like a crappier team can like be better just because their level is higher. Without that, without that there, it just means if you're playing worse, you're going to get stomped, and it kind of sucks. Whereas with Splatoon, it's still there. Like, you're still going to get outplayed because targeting, strategy, all of that stuff still comes into effect. There's not like levels that you're gaining. But at the same time, there are other avenues that you can play the game of this. Like, okay, the actual goal is I'm trying to paint the map. If I kill the enemy team, it will help me paint the map more effectively.
Right.
But if I spend my entire time killing the enemy team, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I loved about the game. And it was like the first time where not being able to talk to my teammates didn't feel awful. I still think it would be better if you can, and I know that's like a huge complaint of Splatoon. Right. But just playing the game competitively, 4v4, not chatting with anyone, was really fun. Like, I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, and Splatoon 2, I believe, is like the Nintendo Online thing, like the app, is going to launch alongside Splatoon 2, or at least shortly thereafter.
It seems like a bit of a pain, but
it's weird how they're doing it. For listeners who don't know, like the way the online like chat and stuff on the Switch will work is actually it's like a smartphone app. So their idea is you just plug your favorite, headphones with a microphone, like your iPhone headset, into your iPhone, and just use the app to chat and do voice and sound that way. Which again is a little weird and more cumbersome than, just plugging a headset directly into the Switch.
Yep.
But I get that. I mean, especially if you want to be using it portably, there's power concerns and things like that they can offload to your phone's battery and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah, Splatoon 2 looking great. I don't really have a ton else like for the Switch coming out that I'm like super excited about. Hollow Knight looks really good, but I want to wait to see if there's a physical release. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if we've talked about it on this show yet, but
they're pretty sweet.
I just love the cases for the Switch games. And I think it's hilarious that you open this amazing packaging and inside there's nothing but this little tiny plastic postage stamp. But I love those boxes, and there are games right now on the eShop that I would love to download and play, but I'm I want to see if I can get a physical copy of it because I just want more of those little case boxes.
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. They're a nice combination of being smaller than the average game box and also being nice that you kind of feel like you can show them off.
Yeah, they look really nice. The red side looks good. Even on the PS4, it's in a generic Blu-ray looking box and stuff like that. So I don't know. I went for a while of being no physical media, download everything. But now I'm I want every Switch game on cartridge that I can get.
All of the Switch. Why do you have Lego City Cop?
I just needed it. I needed the cartridges.
The cartridge.
Yeah, I needed the cartridge.
So you've never played the game? Nope.
And I'm not going to. So mind your own business. Well, I think that does it for the Switchcast. We are excited. We'll have a Splatoon Spleport back for you next episode.
Oh man,
next
so excited.
Splepisode. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about EVO, just because it's cool and weird. Again, the big fighting game expo. I watched some Street Fighter and some Smash Bros. And something called Gun Gear. I don't know. Guilty Gear.
Okay, that sounds right. Yeah.
I don't know. Fighting games and the whole fighting game world is just fascinating to me because it's so... I watch speed runs and there's a part of me that's maybe one day I'll try that. Maybe I'll get into speedrunning. Right now, sometimes I fire up an emulator and I try to do Super Mario World or Super Mario Brothers. Because it's just kind of it seems kind of accessible. And
right.
It's still something I get to do one player, and there's just a fun community about it. There's this huge fighting game community, and I'm just I will never be a part of your world.
That's nice. I didn't know you could do things like that.
Yeah. What is the opposite of Ariel singing, I want to be part of your world? It's I will never be part of your world.
I'm happy sitting here watching.
Yeah. So it's every year I get to kind of observe the migration patterns of the fighting game community. And it's great for science, but yeah, I'm not man, I'm going to go get a joystick controller and start learning combos and practicing EX counters or whatever it is. I'm just it doesn't appeal to me. And I don't know why that is, because there's plenty of other games that take skill and practice and I'm playing Shovel Knight and that game is freaking hard and I don't know that it's necessarily good, but there's skill involved and you need to practice the moves and get used to the jumping. And I understand that fighting games are similar, but I just don't have any. It doesn't.
I think fighting games for casual players have that chess problem, where it's all the information is there. So with a MOBA, you can blame your teammates. And at least, you played bad, but, it was a team effort that you played bad. And with a card game, you can blame your deck. And it's okay, it was bad, but also my deck is awful.
Yeah, or I didn't draw well.
Yeah. Fighting game...
No, you sucked.
It's just you against another person, and if you did worse...
Right.
You did worse.
Yeah.
It's hard to be it's just, it's just a faulty character. It's no, you kind of just...
Right.
Nope.
Which is definitely, me playing fighting games definitely exposes my inner insecurities and my inner how much I feel this need to be seen as the best at everything, because I'm that guy that's well, it's not reading my inputs.
Yeah.
I know I pushed the buttons right, and it's well, obviously you didn't, because your character didn't jump kick, and if you had pressed jump kick correctly, he would have jump kicked, and he didn't. So
fun fact about machines. When you press a series of inputs, they'll actually do the output. Yeah. They don't actually make a decision I'm gonna screw Sean right here.
Yeah.
Nope.
Hey, you guys see Sean playing me right now? Yeah, screw that guy. I'm not gonna jump. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, and I don't like that, because I want to blame. In Hearthstone, I can blame RNG, and I can blame balance, and in Overwatch, I can blame matchmaking and all this stuff. And fighting games, it's just you suck at this.
Yeah, it's no. It's
you
probably...
sit in your suck.
Just a message you're only at the end of the game no, actually, you were a worse human today.
You were a worse person than that other guy. He personed better than you
did.
So fighting games. Yeah. If anybody here is into fighting games, I'm going to watch some at DreamHack because Street Fighter V's happening, and so I'll check it out because it's cool. But
yeah, it's great as a viewer. I don't really have any interest in like diving into that world.
Yeah, which part of that is the fun for watching for me because it's so.
Yeah.
I could/will never do what you're doing. Other games, you're like, I could do that. I could get good at that, and that's the cool part of that is like. Yeah. Oh man, you do this thing that I do, you just do it better versus like I will never in a million years do what you're doing right now and it's awesome.
It's awful.
Good on
and
you.
And awesome, yeah.
Awesome?
Awesome.
It's awesome. Awesome. Got the castle. Yeah, so let's talk about Eternal.
So, it just came out.
Yeah, Eternal is out for mobile. Well, it's in early access on Steam, and I think it's been in early access for a little while.
Like forever.
So this is a game by Direwolf Digital. I think this is actually their game.
It's their personal IP. They hired like all of the Magic pros, all of the pros from Magic the Gathering. They hired. Not actually joking about that. They have like 5 game designers who are professional Magic players. Also continuing to be professional Magic players.
I'm just so glad it didn't turn out like Ascension.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Kibler, but I hate that game so much.
No, yeah, the one physical game I've really loved from Magic players is Star Realms. I think that's just like incredible. I don't think Eternal quite hits that level, but I've been enjoying it. I've played it a couple times now on my phone. Interesting that it beat the Elder Scrolls Legends game to mobile. To the phone. I think that's...
Yeah, Legends is on iPad, but it is not on phone.
Not on phone yet. I know it's supposed to be. Also interesting that it beat Duelist, another like big digital trading card game thing.
Right.
That's on PC right now. Actually
They should just start a new category, which is just... Please play this instead of Hearthstone. That's the category of game. Oh, what kind of game are you working on? It's a please play this instead of Hearthstone game?
But even though our
Please give me some of your Hearthstone money.
We took Hearthstone's UI and added different rules to it.
Yes.
Yeah, Duelist actually just signed a big deal with like Bandai Namco or whatever. And so they're going to be their distributor, and they also got beat by Direwolf to mobile platform. So kind of interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of activity in the space as a competitive game.
Right.
We were talking, the big difference is attacking and blocking.
Yeah.
Kind of leads into one of the things I wrote about with Magic and Hearthstone and how attacking and blocking is like this big deal that you don't really think about.
Yeah.
But the consequences of like how you design the game change a lot about it. So.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't realize what a difference it was until trying Eternal. Because Eternal is sort of... If you like Hearthstone, but you want a little bit more complexity, like some of the complexity from some of the strategic decisions like in Magic, like attacking and blocking, creatures don't attack each other directly. They just block one another and then they attack you and stuff like that. I didn't realize that, like what you're talking about, what a difference that made. Even though I've played some Magic, but I've played like a little bit of Limited, and then I've played with people who are like getting back into Magic after years, and most of those experiences were like, I play against a guy and on his opening turn, he plays like 50 things that turn into a giant like fireball, like dragon baby, and then I'm just dead in one turn.
Well,
and there's
fun.
no interaction. Yeah.
That was fun, guy.
Yeah. I don't know where all these werewolves came from, but I'm very sore now.
Now there are 30 of them, and what's going on?
The game hasn't even started yet. It hasn't even drawn. But yeah, now playing Eternal, where like you play a bunch of games in a row because it's digital and it's fast paced. Yeah, it adds this extra strategic layer that I really enjoy. Like, it's not just, in Hearthstone there's really 2 decisions. Is the card I'm kind of holding right now, is it targeting my opponent or is it targeting a minion? I mean that's it. And it's not bad. Like, Hearthstone's a very good game, but I'm actually really enjoying Eternal because of that extra little bit of strategic layer, like that I keep saying that strategic layer. The strategic glaze. Yeah, the strata glaze that they put on the top of...
The strat glaze.
Yeah.
The glaze of straight.
Of the bundt cake that is card games.
Yeah, so just to pull back a little bit, Hearthstone, the attacker gets to choose who to attack. So if you have 2 creatures on the field, your opponent has 2 creatures. You get to choose if you are attacking those creatures or the opponent or whatever combination, and in what order you're attacking them as well. In Eternal, you just say, I am attacking you, the opponent, with X number of creatures, and the opponent gets to decide how to block.
Right.
And then you get to decide of the blockers who you're dealing damage to. That doesn't happen that often, though. And what that means is, instead of attacking being this really easy thing where, like, burning someone's face down is pretty regular, where it is in Hearthstone, it means the defender actually has most of the advantage in blocking because they can choose not to block if they don't want.
Yeah.
They can choose to block the creature they want against your weaker creature, so, like, they can take more damage just to get a card out of it. And it really does expand the playing field for what's possible in the design. It obviously closes off. It increases the skill cap. Like, a lot of people are going to be turned off just because there's, like, so much going on that they don't understand. But at lower levels for amateur players, I think it's really great as a digital game because there's, like, a lot of stuff that you get to think about in games where your decks aren't perfect and you're lower on the ladder that you really don't get to in Hearthstone because it's like, oh, our decks aren't perfect. We're both probably playing Hunter or, like, some deck that's going to burn you down. And now I'm just, like, not a lot of interaction.
In Hearthstone, there is sort of there's this tier of, like, deck archetypes, which is unfortunate because, like, maybe you just like playing aggro, but it's kind of like, for the most part, aggro is like a tier 3 play style. And then mid-range to control, those are like your tier 2, and then tier 1 are your you don't deserve to win combos where you just manage to, like, suck out until the very last card, and then that card does 100 damage to your opponent. And it's just like, well, that was great. Like, I spent all the time building this nice board and playing, and then you just, like, all you had to do is survive till turn 12 and I lose. And it's like there's not room for, like, the diversity at the different skill levels. It's just like, oh, you want to reach legend, and these are your archetypes, and these are your decks. Yeah. What I'm enjoying about Eternal right now is how it is much more attrition based. Like, you're not just burning face the whole game. Now, there might come a point where you've got so many creatures on the board that your opponent just can't block, and then it's just, but it's obvious that you've already kind of sealed the game at that point. And that's why what I like about Magic as well is it's kind of like, okay, I've played out my deck to this point, and now I can actually, like, start to put my win condition into play. And I don't know, I'm really enjoying Eternal. The thing that has blown me away the most was how flawless their, like, online service has been.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, actually.
Because, like, I installed it on my phone, started playing the tutorials on my phone, got, like, halfway through one of the tutorials, and was like, well, I'm going to go play this on my PC. Downloaded it, got something to drink, came back, signed in with my account that I just made, and it just picked me up right where I left off. Went a little further this morning on the train, opened on my phone, and I mean it instantly, right where I was, like, oh, pick back up at the next mission in the tutorial. It was just like, it was so smooth and flawless. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that they've taken all of that experience they had consulting for other companies and doing their digital work with their IP, and then are like, okay, now we're ready to make our own games and execute it in a way that only someone can with that much experience.
Right.
And it's nice to see that being that well made.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, like, UI quirks and stuff like that I'm sure will get worked out. Like, at the beginning of the game, and when you're choosing whether or not you're going to redraw your hand, you can, like, you know, either hover your mouse or hover your finger, like, over the cards that it's showing you, and it shows you, like, them zoomed in. But it doesn't, like, pop that out. It, like, shows a second image over top, bigger, and so you can still see the other one. So there's, like, little quirky things like that. But I'm really surprised at how much I'm enjoying it. I feel bad because they had a huge booth at Comic-Con. Like, they like, brought their A game to Denver Comic-Con, and they had some iPads
They're a
set up.
Denver-based company. Full
Which
disclosure.
is also rad. And I played, like, 20 seconds of Eternal on iPads that they had set up, and I just sort of dismissed it as, like, another Hearthstone clone. And now that I actually, like, sat down and spent, like, time playing it, I'm really enjoying it because it does have the things I like about Magic's gameplay in something that feels more, okay, I can pick this up and play a couple of quick games on the train, or I can actually sit down at my PC and like I'm going to play Eternal for a while now.
Yeah, and it has me really interested with the new digital direction that Magic is going. I still think in a world where, like, if Magic had a good digital client that's mobile, I probably would play Magic instead. Yeah. It's obviously a risk that Eternal has. What's interesting, though, is that Eternal being digital only means they can make cards that Magic will literally never make.
Yeah.
Magic will, I'm sure, at some point come out with a great client that's really fun to play, but Eternal can become a different game.
Right.
And I think that will be really, really interesting over time to see. Like, Eternal right now is pretty much like, okay, here's some design concepts from Hearthstone, here's some design concepts from Magic, mostly the same, executed in kind of an interesting way.
Yeah.
They executed it really well, and I think they hit it off, like, in a good way, but it's not a particularly interesting game. It just, like, hits the notes. Like, a lot of times you'll see with indie games that, like, play off of Zelda, where it's like, this is a small version of Zelda. It's not that different, but it's Zelda, and I'm enjoying it, so whatever.
Right.
What's interesting about Eternal is, like, what happens in 5 years when they, like, start to, like, really hit their stride as this is what the design of Eternal is.
Right.
I think that's where it could get really interesting to see where it goes and what they do with it.
Yeah. It's if you go to the Steam page, the in the Steam store for Eternal is actually funny because the blurb that's right, like the main blurb that's on there, and I don't know who wrote it, like some reviewer, but it says like it's basically the game that we all wished Hearthstone would have been, and it's also the game that we all want Magic Online to become.
Yeah,
and
which is a very very good description.
It's like actually very astute because it has some of those Magic design decisions that Hearthstone doesn't have. It feels like there's a little bit more depth and a little bit more strategy to it. And Hearthstone is fun and crazy, and again, I'm excited to go watch it at DreamHack, and like it's still very entertaining, very fun to play. But I like the extra level of strategy that things like Magic and now Eternal offer. But also, like you said, Magic Online is always going to be handicapped because every card in Magic Online has to be something that they can print tomorrow and send to physical players, and so it just can't do things that a physical card can't do. And I like that.
Yeah, it makes me hopeful that they can coexist in the space instead of like one of them dominating the other.
Right.
And I think it really shows kind of what I was talking about, the difference between a sport and a game. When you make design decisions to make something as a more fun game, you can really lose a lot of what makes a sport good. And things like that frustrate gamers, like land cards that both Eternal and Magic have, which are like huge RNG moments sometimes where you just don't draw the land you need. That Hearthstone just completely avoids.
Right.
Or like the fact that your opponent can interact with you on your turn.
Yeah.
Little moments like that like can lead to huge frustration, introduce huge amounts of complexity, move it more towards being a sport because it's like, okay, how I play when I get RNG'd in this way defines the different like contours of the game, especially in competitive scenes, where sometimes in Hearthstone, even at high levels, it's like, oh, these guys are making plays out of their minds, but it doesn't necessarily feel like they're playing against each other to the same level. Like, oh, he just juked him out because he read his hand and like she figured this thing out, and as a result, she can win the game because she's playing the player.
Right.
Whereas with Magic and Eternal, there's just more opportunities for counterplay against the player.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, and this is actually where, like, this is where the honeymoon ended for Hearthstone for me, which was I think it was last BlizzCon's, like, main Hearthstone championship, and Pavel won in an earlier round playing a 1-mana creature which gives you a random mage spell. And it gave him the Firelands Portal, which lets you do 5 damage to anything and summon a 5-mana creature. And it was just like he was completely behind on the board. He was really in a dire situation. And then he just played this 1-power card, which just happened to give him like the best possible result. And so it wasn't like, I mean, he made the decision to play the 1-mana creature, but it was sort of an obvious, it's only 1 mana and it might give me something really good. And then it did. So stuff like that where it almost feels like, well, it just came down to a coin flip. Like it was 50-50. No matter what the odds are, it actually was just 50-50. Either he was going to get a really good draw or he was not. And watching him get the really good draw, and he's a good player, but it just like that sort of RNG where it didn't necessarily come down to he made a really good decision. Like if I block here, then like my opponent's not going to have an answer the next turn because he's going to be like those kind of things don't happen as often versus, you know, the game rolled a die and I got a really good result off of it.
Yeah, I think for me it's like what is the limit that a player can play to? Because every game, especially card games, have this limit where eventually you're going to fall into these predefined moves that you're going to just play because they're the most advantageous. That's just like a thing that card games get to. It's kind of natural. But what's interesting is Hearthstone has 30 cards. The average unique card deck size is like number of cards is going to be about 15. You're going to see most cards most games.
Right.
Whereas with Magic and Eternal, the average deck size is larger because there are lands that you draw. It means there's less of an opportunity for you to draw the same card.
Yeah.
And so what actually happens is the cards in Magic and Eternal give you more control over the game. The games are so random that like the cards you play actually make it more likely that what you want to happen will occur.
Yeah.
And the cards you choose to put in will change the way the game gets played moving forward, whereas with Hearthstone, it's actually the opposite. The game is already so predetermined by the cards you put in your deck, that the cards themselves have to be the source of randomness. Right, you'll see this in Eternal. Eternal doesn't really have many of the same types of random effects that Hearthstone does, and that's not because it has to print a digital game or physical game. It doesn't. But it doesn't have to do that because there's so much RNG other places in the game that it doesn't have to like make the game different by printing cards that are random by default. And that's not to say that like playing a random card means you didn't do something with skill. It means that in that instance with Pavel, it's not that he didn't outskill his opponent in some scenarios. He probably did. But what happens is both players play when two players play at a high skill cap.
Yeah.
Where they're roughly equal, it's harder for them to find advantages by playing cards differently. And what ends up happening...
It's harder to actually let your skill be the determining factor.
Yeah, or like outplay your opponent based on something you see.
Yeah.
It's more just like, do I see the optimal line? Which is very hard. That's not to say it's not.
Yeah.
It is very hard in Hearthstone still. But once you see the optimal line, and once you have two players who play the optimal line, what ends up happening is you feel like you're just hitting a skill cap, and then the randomness is what determines the outcome.
That's what actually carries you over the finish line.
Yeah, which isn't to say that like he didn't deserve to be there. He certainly did. He certainly is a very skilled player. All these players are. But once you hit like the top 16, whether or not you win sometimes can feel less a result of, okay, these were a set of careful decisions. These were the decks I chose to bring more than...
Right.
This is the matchup I got, I'm slightly advantaged, and I had this RNG effect.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where Eternal has like a real opportunity to like live in that sort of spectrum.
Yeah. Quick question before we wrap up. Would expanding deck sizes in Hearthstone help with that? Do you think that would, if there were suddenly 45 card decks?
It probably would a little. And I actually think Magic could probably go the other way and say instead of 4 unique cards per deck, 4 copies of a unique card, it should be like 2, and then like legendary should be 1 or something. I actually think that'd be really positive for Magic, or not 2 and 1.
Keep the deck sizes the same, but fewer of the same.
Yeah, increase the randomness there a little bit. I think the challenge with Hearthstone is because of how limited the game design structure is, and that's not to say limited in the sense that like, oh, it's bad. It's just like there's a lot of constraints around.
Right.
You can't play on your opponent's turn. Secrets have to be the same cost per class.
Oh, right.
They can't not. Like, you can't print a 2...
Yeah, and they can't proc on your turn.
Right. They, like... Which just, like, limits what has to happen. And so I think if you were to do that, you wouldn't actually see a lot more... You would actually just feel the randomness of the deck RNG more, and it would just annoy you. I think that would be my concern if I were a designer of Hearthstone, where it's just like, okay, let's say we add 5 more cards. Okay, so now I'm just diluting my deck. And with Hearthstone, unlike with Magic or with Eternal, there's not an opportunity like with Eternal. I'm pulling sort of mana cards from my deck.
Right.
I'm searching things. With Magic, that's all over the place. Like,
right.
I'm looking at the top 3. I'm making a decision. Like, interacting with your deck and your graveyard is such a huge part of Magic. It's not at all with Hearthstone. Discover is like this great opportunity, this design space that they found, which I still think is incredible.
Yeah.
But they're not manipulating their deck.
Right.
Again, because of a design decision to make this game so accessible to new players.
Yeah.
So I think adding too many more cards would actually just make it feel even more random. And that they kind of have to play within that design space that they have. That's not to say it's a bad game. That's not to say it's a worse game than Eternal or Magic or Duelist or whatever. It's just to say that, like, in order to reach a wider audience, they made a conscious decision to limit the amount of complexity. And once they're there, they can't just say, oh, well, we're going to add this complexity because we feel like it. They have to sort of live within that complexity and make decisions that make sense there. And I think they do a good job.
Yeah.
But it's the game it's going to be in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap up for this edition of The Main Loop. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter so you know when our new episodes are live at The Main Loop. You can also email us your feedback. We love them emails at mainloopshow@gmail.com. Also, please pop over to iTunes and leave a review for the show. Let us know what you think. And if you like it, help other people find it. We'll be back in 2 weeks talking, I'm sure, a lot about Splatoon and a lot more about Eternal once we've got a little bit more of that under our belt,
I'm looking forward
under
to
our
some
shoes,
album play.
under our feet,
under our noob shoes,
on our back, on the back of our noob shoes, on the wings of noob shoes.
Album dropping next month.
It's going to be fire. We'll be back in 2 weeks. See you, everybody.
See ya.